Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Read Books Get Lit. I'm Zaida, and joining me today in the spot I was going to sit in is First Cat. And now she's sleeping, or pretending to be sleeping. Classic First Cat. Today I wanted to sit down with you and just have, a talk story session. Basically, talk story in Hawaii. We just say that whenever we get together with our friends or our family and we, have a casual conversation about anything, catch up about what we've been up to. So I went to an author event at the end of August. I've only been to a few. I did go to my first one 2 years ago. I got to meet Gail Tsukiyama, and she's one of my favorite authors. I first read The Street of a Thousand Blossoms. That it was a straight up thrift find. It was sort of random that I came across it, and I attribute my love of historical fiction to that book specifically. So getting to meet Gail Tsukiyama, got to talk with her a little bit afterwards. Her dad is from Hawaii, so she has that tie. She's Asian American. She writes about Asian American characters, both, in Asia and then here in the States as well. So I obviously connect and enjoy reading those stories. So it was a treat to get to meet her, and especially having it be my first author event. That was, a pretty cool experience. So at the end of August, I got to meet Susan Dennard. She is a YA fantasy author. She's written a couple series. I know that she did the Witchland series and then Something Strange and Deadly, I think. I haven't read any of those books, but I know that they are very popular with her fans, which is something we will get to later. But the one book of hers that I did read, I read The Luminaries. I got an arc of that book when it came out, and I feel like it showed up at the right time. I was in a very long reading slump, and that was one of two books that kind of got me out of that reading slump. It was a fun, out of my ordinary genre book. So I think that really helped me because it was new and different. And for me, I don't I have my favorite genres and, favorite authors and storylines and everything. But sometimes when you deviate from your normal routine, it kind of like jazzes things up for you. Or maybe that's just me. I don't know. Anyway, all to say, I enjoyed the book. I do have books two and three. Haven't read them yet, but I will. And then I wanted to go, show my support, show up, sit down, listen, talk a little bit. So I guess this is sort of my recap of the author event and what what my thoughts are about some of the topics and themes that came up during her discussion. As you can see, I am totally stalking Susan Dennard into the bookstore. No, not really, but I happened to arrive at the same time and just followed her into Powell's. So if you are familiar with the Portland metro area, you've probably heard of Powell's Books. It is the largest independent bookstore in the country. There are three locations. The main location is in downtown Portland. It's basically the size of an entire city block. There are multiple stories to it, a bunch of different rooms, and fun fact, they actually have maps, like paper maps, for visitors and people who are going to the store. So the first time I went there, I grabbed myself a map. Susan's author talk was pretty fun because we got to cover a bunch of different topics within that hour-long discussion. Of course, we talked about her new book. We heard her thoughts on some of her older projects and some of her, characters from the other series. And she also shared insight about the writing side of things and the publishing world. And that particularly was really interesting for me. if you've been here for a second, you might have seen my previous video. I shared a writing and revising session. I'm working on a manuscript, YA historical fiction, and I'm trying to get it to a place where it is polished enough that I can confidently or semi confidently pitch that to literary agents. That's the goal. So everything she had to share about writing and publishing was super helpful for me. I really appreciated how honest she was about the writing process in general. It is not easy. It is very difficult and it's a long process. You're often doing it by yourself. It can last months to years, and there's a lot of self-doubt throughout that entire process. And you kind of just have to find your way to push through, even when it sucks, even when you don't know how or what to do. She also mentioned that it's important to take breaks from your writing, which is really helpful. I think we're often inundated with the concept that everything needs to be done now. We are losing time, we are wasting time. I have to get this done immediately. And that doesn't always produce the best work. And it is important to step away from something if it's not quite working, if you're struggling with it. I've realized over the decade or so that I've been writing these fiction manuscripts that it doesn't really serve me if I force myself to get through it. So I appreciated her saying that. I think, especially for new writers and aspiring authors, that's something that we kind of have to figure out and work through within our own writing process. On that note, I just want to point out that Susan is a really good example of an author whose career and trajectory wasn't as expected or straightforward as she thought it was going to be. And what she ended up sharing with us is that, she's started and stopped different manuscripts at many different points within her decade plus of writing and publishing books. And that was kind of eye-opening for me because I I am not the type of person that will work on multiple stories at once. It's similar to how I can't read multiple books at once. But what Susan was talking about is that, sometimes if a story wasn't working or she was blocked about something in this particular manuscript, she would put it aside and then work on something else. If she got blocked here, okay, well, she'll put that into a drawer and, oh, here's this new idea I've been thinking of. And that is not something that I'm used to. But I can definitely see how that's helpful and why it's very important, even if you can't work on the initial project that you started. It'll do you some good to work on other projects because you are still using those muscles, you are still engaging your creativity and imagination, even if it is for a different project. I think all creative people can gain something from just knowing that as long as you keep going and you are still working towards something, creating something, that's the most important thing, not necessarily, always focusing on one project at one time, because what we don't want to do is force ourselves to work on this project that's not working, because that's going to lead to burnout and that's going to probably get really frustrating for you and maybe lead to resentment for that project. And I think for a lot of creative people, it's not necessarily like, falling in love with this story. it's more about staying in love with this story because you're going to be working on it for a very long time, right? You need to sustain that passion, that energy for that particular story so you can, however long it takes, get through it from beginning to end. So I don't know if any of this made sense. Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? Something cool about the Powell's stores, there's always something to look at, right? And even the displays are pretty fun when they put them together. There's also a lot of merch. I really like the fact that Powell's, they feature merchandise from local business owners and artists, so it's always nice to go and see what they have out in rotation whenever I stop by the bookstore. We did talk about book talk during the discussion, which was applicable. It made sense. I'm not on TikTok. I have no interest on being there in that space. I just have a lot of opinions about it, and it's not great. But I can admit that TikTok, and in this particular case, the book talk community, has really influenced the publishing world and the changes that have happened in the publishing world. It really has dictated some of the prioritized genres and authors versus what we are seeing as far as dying genres. Unfortunately, YA is kind of a dying genre, which is something that Susan touched on, because she is a straight YA author. And for me, I've thus far also only written YA manuscripts. And unfortunately, and we can link it back to book talk, I'm sure, a lot of YA authors have transitioned and they are now writing for the adult audiences. And that's kind of a bummer, but that was just a really good example of how social media is shaping the publishing industry and the different types of books, the different tropes and genres that publishing houses are looking at, which doesn't really do anything for me because my story does not fit into any of the popular anything. Uh but you know what? I still love my story and I'm still going to move forward with it. So you do you. I thought it was super just enlightening to see Susan interact in real time with her fan base. Most of the people in the audience were probably, mid 40 white women and older, and they were all they pretty I assumed they had all read her Witchland series. uh I'm pretty sure they all read the Luminaries series as well. But what was crazy for me, as someone who I've only read one book of Susan's, but everybody else having read majority of her published work, is how far back their like fandom went with her. Apparently she's had a following, dating back to, Twitter and Wattpad and Substack. A lot of her fans, and some of them were there in the audience, they have been following with her and keeping up with her through social media for years. And that was very eye-opening to how critical having this online presence is in today's day and age of writing and publishing. And I I mean, it brings Susan Dennard a lot of joy. She was super stoked to meet everyone. I need I need to point this out. She literally talked with some people. Like when she did the book signing afterwards, she spent like 10 minutes with one person, you know? And yeah, that made everybody else wait a really long time. But not a lot of authors will commit to really like having that conversation, having that dialogue with a fan. And she was just chatting it up with people, you know? She recognized some of these audience members by their online handles, right? Like the people that would be commenting or tweeting her back or, commenting on her Wattpad stories, Substack newsletter. And that was super cool because you could tell that she really, really appreciates all of her fans. And she really does take the time to manage those accounts and go back and have this, dialogue with these people who are, fans reading her work. And it's not just like they're not just a number. They're not just a body to buy her book, right? They are these people who are deeply invested in these stories and characters that she created, and she genuinely has so much gratitude for them, which I thought was just wonderful. I loved seeing it. This was a tangent. What were we talking about? Ah, yes, fan interactions. So having a fan base, having an online presence, it is, I wouldn't say necessary, but I just saw firsthand how powerful it can be. Not like,
Powerful, I'm gonna sell all the books in the world, haha.
no, just, like the validation that what you're spending all of this time on, the art that you're creating, the stories that you're telling, it's it's landing with readers, and it's making a difference. It's impacting them somehow. And like it or not, virtual internet socializing on social media, that's kind of how it is these days. And there's a lot of things that are not great about social media, but sometimes we do find little nuggets of positivity. And I think this was one of those examples of, how cool it is when you do build that online community, when you do have that space to kind of go and celebrate these stories and these characters with other people who are also fans. And that was just, that was super dope. I realized I haven't actually shown any of the books that I got signed, so I'm going to do that now. Uh, this is the arc that I got. This is the Luminaries. When did this come out? For sale November 2022. Oh shit, it was that long ago? I thought this came out in 2023. I have no concept of time. Anyway, this was one of the books that got me out of my writing slump, apparently in 2022. News to me. It was just a really fun read and different from what I was used to. So, if you kind of like moody, gloomy, small town, uh, you know, huntery trials with monstery, shadow lurking, mysterious goings on in a small town, might as well check it out. I liked it. It was fun. And I also really like the cover. All of the covers for this series, I really, really like. So don't judge a book by its cover, but if you do, at least make sure the cover is nice. Here is book 2. This is called The Hunting Moon. Also, very nice cover. I just own so many black books. I feel like that's the most common color for books, at least on my shelves. And I don't know if you can see, but there's like a little bit of silver foiling for the title. So that's cool. That's book 2. And then book 3 is The Whispering Night, also some foil, orange this time. I really like the covers. They did really good with this, I feel like. But these are books 2 and 3. I will get to them eventually. Don't worry. Oh, and Susan actually she signed all of my books, and for the Luminaries, this series, she wrote something different in every single book, and I'm assuming it has to do with that actual story. So I'll share little photos of each one of those cuz I didn't I was chatting with her while she was signing the books, right? So I didn't know what she wrote until I got back to my place and I opened them up. I'm like, "Oh, look. That's like a really fun little find." Um and kind of cool that she does that for each one of her different books. So, yeah, I thought that was a nice little treat. And last but not least, we have the newly released book just came out. This is called The Executioners 3. So when she was describing it, she kind of threw out words like 90s fall cozy small town high school but murder, you know? Cuz that's the best kind of combination. Anyway, this is the book. She also signed it, and there is not really sprayed edges, but I don't know if you can see that if the camera will pick it up. But on the side, it does say "Take heed," which I'm assuming has to do with the story. And I think she was talking about the fact that she had shared majority of this book for free on Wattpad, and now I guess she didn't include the ending, or maybe she changed the ending, something along those lines. But now it's just kind of funny that we actually have the physical copy. And I want to pull out this bookmark. She did give everybody these exclusive book tour. I don't know if you can, it says take heed and take watch. So that's one side, and it's like silver and black. And then on the other side, it says the Executioners 3, and then it's blue with the orange bell. So I thought that was really nice too, to have a fun little bookmark for the tour. Also, before we go, just wanted to share this full 360 panorama of the empty bookstore. This was at the very end of the signing. Basically, we were the last ones there. And huge shout out to the manager who rang me up, who said I could go ahead and take this shot. So, very much appreciated. So that is a wrap on the recap of the author event with Susan Dennard. It was a really good time. I have not yet had a bad experience at one of these author events. It's kind of just cool to actually, meet these writers in person, get to hear a little bit about what, books they're reading, authors they like, their writing process, what they're working on next, and just getting to chat with them for a couple of minutes, thank them for writing these stories and sharing with us. So yeah, it was a really good time. And go support these authors. They need our support. So if you can make it, and if there's a bookstore or library near you that has these and puts these on throughout the year, definitely go check it out. It's always it's super low key, which is what I that's my speed. So, yeah, definitely recommend them. As always, if there was at least one thing you liked about this video, please give this a thumbs up and consider subscribing. It can definitely help my channel grow, and I would very much appreciate the support. Do you go to any author events in your area? Have you met any of your favorite authors or gotten books signed? Leave a comment below. I would love to hear all about it. Oh, and before we go, in case you haven't seen it, I did share a recent writing session in a writing vlog. I give you a little insight about where I am in the manuscript and where I'm headed in the next phase of the writing process. I also give you a desk tour of how I like to set everything up and how I organize my notes. So if you're interested in that, definitely go check it out. But I think that's all for now. I will catch you in the next video. Until next time, bye.